My guest in the Nimataion today is Andrieh Vitimus, and together we are spinning a yarn. Andrieh, you're a chaos magician, author, voodoo priest, hypnotherapist, NLP practitioner, podcaster, and so on. Great to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you for calling me to come on the show.
Yeah. So what has been your favorite story in your childhood?
So a lot of people don't know that I'm actually Ukrainian. And when I was making Pasinski way back when I was a kid, and Pasinski is the decorated eggs that Ukrainians make. So they're the beautiful eggs.
Mm-hmm.
And my great grandmother told me a story about Pasinski. And that story was that we have to every year make these eggs. And the reason is that in the creation of the world, a great demon was created in the world. That if these eggs aren't made to trap the demon, and then in some ways, sort of, you trap it inside the eggs of rebirth, that the demon would destroy the world. So no matter what happens, no matter what religion you become, no matter what religion all Ukrainians become, they have to go and make the Pasinski every year, no matter what, to keep that demon trapped that would otherwise eat the world.
Wow.
And if people don't know what those are, the decorated eggs, basically, you have to repetitively dye the eggs and they have beautiful designs. It's sort of the root of why most people do decorate the eggs is out of that Ukrainian/Slavic tradition of decorating eggs. But that's the original story of why the eggs were done. And we were a Christian family growing up, so that story was told to me despite that.
Yeah. These old traditions, they survive, whether any religion is there or not. So did you decorate them for Easter?
Yeah. So I use the beeswax to decorate the eggs every year.
Yeah.
I'm not that good, but I have a few. They look okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you're still holding on to that tradition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and now that I'm older and I can actually look up the history, and there's actually a whole magical tradition around these eggs that not only do you bind this, what I was told was you're binding a demon, but not only that, you also can kind of make wishes out of the act. So you not only bind this negative force, you actually can make wishes while you're doing it.
Oh yeah. It's sort of this going in a meditative trance while decorating the eggs, and that helps to manifest your wishes. Yeah.
Although it takes days and days and days and days to decorate the eggs with the beeswax. So it's or weeks.
Oh, wow. Do you happen to have one with you?
I don't. I should have brought one. But I'll send you a picture of some I have at my house that I make.
Yes, please.
So you can include that.
It's interesting. I mean, eggs, they are I think in every culture, they belong to the very old magic. Like everywhere you look, eggs are being offered to the gods, or they have this inevitable notion of fertility and magic in it. I think of the Finnish Kalevala, where the world sprung from an egg, and something like it. It's
a
everywhere.
Very similar story, very close. Or I mean, it's like mirror images of that. Well, you use the eggs for fertility to bind the destructive elements of the world.
Yeah,
very similar.
Yeah. Do you have any idea how this came into being? How our relationship to eggs and magic worldwide is connected?
Well, I mean, it's like the story of the chicken or the egg, right? I mean, but that was a bad pun. But in all seriousness, I mean, kind of like, I think if you think about it, just naturally speaking, there's this rock, and all of a sudden, life emerges from it.
Mm.
I mean, eggs not rock. Obviously, we understand it, but they're like rock-like substances, and all of a sudden, then there's life. Like, if you think about it, isn't that the best metaphor for our whole planet? Like, here's this rock,
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden, there's life.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, but I've never heard this tradition of binding a demon to it or in it. Is this special for Slavic traditions?
So I think it's definitely a Ukrainian tradition. I mean, it's something that that story was relayed to me more than once to make sure I understood, like, that it, as a kid, people repeat things. Um, and I have seen literature to back that up, like the original. I think it's more of an alchemy than a trapping. Um,
Ah,
Now that I, am older and kind of, there's what you hear from your great grandmother when you're sort of a youngin, and they're trying to relay stuff, and there's things you understand as a magician. And I think it's less of a binding inside as it is a sort of alchemizing, or at
ah,
least that's what I've interpreted now. It's sort of like it is a spiritual binding, but then when you're sort of, the way you decorate the Basinski is there's certain, it's almost like runes that you could draw on it, or it's pattern runes they could draw around it. So that's, to me, is more like an alchemizing, like
mm,
you're changing the negative force to this positive force, or you're at first binding part of the negative force and then moving it. They didn't explain it that way, but that's my interpretation now, as a more kind of been doing magic for a few years, that
yeah,
they
makes
didn't even
sense
explain to
absolutely.
me that you put that the original purpose, actually, also you put things you wanted on the egg, so you'd have uh like crops. So
Mm,
I didn't understand why I was drawing like little crops, little, like, it's Ukraine, so it's like, of course you're drawing little wheat stems all over the egg because that's your crop, and you're trying to say you want more crops. or or you might put little stars, like, which is like sort of spiritual insight, or there's a whole bunch of different symbols.
mm.
But when you think about them, it makes perfect sense. People are asking for love, or they're asking for crops, or they're asking for good health or something. So it's like you're taking the bad of the world and trying to make something good out of it.
Yeah, that that's sort of an apotropaic charm mutating into a wish charm, all in one thing. That's
I think that's, when we were looking at a lot of the more natural based traditions, that's very typical, right? Because the seasons change.
yeah.
Winter becomes spring, and spring becomes summer. And then eventually it all fades away back into winter. um so of course the negative fades to good, the negative grows, is the fertilizer for the good.
Mm.
It sort of fits like what they were looking at, and of course then their magic would fit that.
Yeah, cycle of life and workings of magic all condensed in one
One egg.
yeah, in one egg.
And that's the other thing about in back in the day when they were making these, they didn't have varnish. They didn't use varnish on these eggs. So people would spend months potentially on one egg. Like the really pretty artist, could be months. And eventually, like everything else, the egg, even though you have dyed it multiple times, it looks beautiful. Time breaks it,
Mm,
right? So time decays the egg. Like, it doesn't get moldy or anything like that, but the shell gets brittle. It falls apart. It goes to dust. So that beautiful spell, or that beautiful egg that was there, fades back to nothing.
mm.
Right now, people will varnish those eggs. They will, um, so they'll be lasting forever. But that's not how they originally were. And that also was told me, like, yeah, when it breaks, like, take it in the backyard and since we have a little backyard, uh, and that was in Chicago. So it's not a big backyard, but it was a little backyard. Like go make a little fire and then like burn the egg when it breaks, or bury the egg when
Yeah,
it breaks. Like just put it back into the earth.
yeah.
There was no
Giving the your wishes back to the field. It's like
right after you already got it.
visualizing an intention and then burn the sigil. It's
Yeah. I mean, like it was one combination. I was actually told not to varnish them by my great
yeah,
grandmother. Like she didn't tell me why again, but she's like, yeah. After the eggs kind of crumble, you take them, bury them, or burn it, like one of the two. Like, but don't. So she's like, don't varnish them. Like I know you can go get varnish them. So she was trying to teach me, right? But as a kid, I didn't understand
mm,
why wouldn't you varnish that? And a lot of people do varnish the eggs when they spend all that time on it. But from a magical perspective, she's trying to not teach me magic, but teach me some of our tradition before the family moved from Ukraine.
yeah, yeah. Wow, that's how stories stay with us, and we unpack them over decades, uh, and discover lots and lots more meaning in them. I, yeah, I love it. Andrieh, thank you so much for this insight into Ukrainian folk magic and this story of your great grandmother.
Well, at least it's in my family's Ukrainian folk magic. So maybe it's not in everyone's Ukrainian folk magic,
Yeah,
but it's
yeah.
certainly it was in my family's. So thank you for letting me tell that story. And I'll send you some pictures that you can include.
Yes,
Now,
please.
granted, when people see my pictures, I have some eggs that were professionally done and those have varnished. I can admit it. But you can see the ones I made are less professional. So no judgment. I try my best. My hand's not as steady as I need it to be that great of an artist with a hot
Yeah.
beeswax egg wax.
Yeah,
Like
wonderful.
I
And
guess you get calluses after a while, and real artists, you do this all the time. They don't have any issues. I don't
mm.
have the calluses, so when I like get a bit of beeswax in my hand, I'm like, and then you can see the egg has little, like
Yeah, but that's part of the process.
yeah,
And
it is. It is.
the personal touch of your creativity adds to the magic.
It does. It does.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, and I have a store in Toronto, like we have all the herbs, and we're definitely thinking about. I'm thinking about running classes on how to make eggs, how to make the eggs once I could get all the supplies. Not the eggs, obviously, I can just go to the store for that. But once I get all the other like beeswax supplies and wax, I'm definitely thinking about running a whole bunch of workshops on just how to make the eggs and make your wish
Yeah.
around Easter time.
That's powerful. And come to think of it, I mean, bees, they are so important. There's so much tradition on bees and their magic. And for me, honey is my most beloved offering I can give.
Yeah,
And their wax is also very potent. So the all of these combined, and that's like, whoa, I got a shiver running
I
down my.
know, right?
Yeah,
It's just offhand reminding me, like, you got to make the eggs this year.
yeah,
When you're a kid, the sad part is when you're a kid, you don't know, and your grandmother, great grandmother is telling you to go do this. You're like, I don't want to spend a week making this egg. Like, go into the Ukrainian center every day after school. I don't want to do that.
mm,
But then you realize later, like, wow, this is actually some like really elegant magic.
yeah,
They're not calling it magic, but it really is elegant magic.
yeah, yeah, totally. It reminds me very much of lots of things my grandfather told me and showed me. It, it has the same quality of seemingly simple, but nonetheless very powerful magic.
Yeah.
Yeah, wonderful. Andrieh, it has been such a pleasure talking with you, and thanks again for relaying that story. I'm happy to
Thanks
talk
for
with you.
having me. I love it.
Thank you. Until next
On your
time.
next project, I'd love to come back too.
Yeah, great. The world is magical.